Don't be surprised if in the coming days, Iran's remaining air defense forces suddenly become more efficient and manage to shoot down several Chinese-made JF-17 Thunder fighter jets. Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Defense officially announced on April 11th that a Pakistani ground force of approximately 13,000 personnel, along with multiple fighter jets, has been deployed to King Abdulaziz Air Base in eastern Saudi Arabia. They are there to defend against the ongoing Iranian drone and missile attacks. This marks Pakistan's largest military deployment to Saudi Arabia since the 1991 Gulf War. According to a statement from the Saudi Ministry of Defense, the deployment is based on the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, or the SMDA. This agreement was signed between the two countries in September 2025. It aims to strengthen bilateral military coordination, enhance joint operational readiness, and maintain regional security and stability. Pakistan has confirmed that the deployment includes ground troops and approximately 10 to 18 JF-17 or F-16 fighter jets, as well as necessary supply aircraft and logistical personnel. The immediate background of this deployment is the long-standing defense and economic relationship between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Reports in early April indicated that Saudi Arabia had requested Pakistan to fulfill its mutual defense obligations as soon as possible, or otherwise return approximately $6.3 billion in previously provided loans. Pakistan ultimately chose to fulfill its treaty commitments through actual military support. The current situation in the Middle East is very tense, with the risk of conflict between Iran and certain Arab countries increasing. Ceasefire negotiations between the United States and Iran recently collapsed in Islamabad, and Iran has previously carried out strikes against regional targets. In this context, military cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is widely viewed as an active defense posture aimed at strengthening against potential threats. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif have met multiple times and signed relevant agreements. Both sides have emphasized that these actions are not directed at any specific country. However, the phrase, jointly safeguarding regional security, has been interpreted by observers as an important signal relating to challenges involving Iran. The Saudi Ministry of Defense emphasized that this deployment is a normal defense cooperation between brotherly nations, which helps enhance air defense and ground defense capabilities in eastern Saudi Arabia. The Pakistani military and government responded in a low-key manner, stating that this is a routine action to fulfill bilateral agreements, while also helping the Pakistani military gain combat experience and economic support. As the news reached mainland China, the tone on social media platforms shifted abruptly. A large number of videos showing Chinese nationals being unwelcome or even humiliated in Pakistan emerged, accompanied by widespread criticism. Pakistan, once regarded by many Chinese as a close iron brother ally, was suddenly labeled by netizens as an ingrate. A Chinese travel blogger said that a few months ago, after refueling at a gas station in Pakistan and preparing to leave, a young man at the station suddenly gave him the middle finger. Because it was so unexpected, he was momentarily stunned and didn't react immediately. After realizing what had happened, he felt upset and went back to find the station manager, demanding an apology. The vlogger said that the manager called the young man over, scolded him, and even slapped him to show sincerity. The vlogger was deeply moved, praising the manager's handling of the situation and talking at length about the long-standing friendship between China and Pakistan. He even told the manager, "Let's stand together against India." However, the manager then told him that fuel prices might rise next year and might become more expensive. Comments from netizens were somewhat surprising. Many wrote things like, "The so-called Iron Brotherhood is just what Chinese people believe. It doesn't mean they see it the same way. Don't be overly self-satisfied. They're just after your small amount of money. And Chinese people traveling abroad should remember, never confuse politics with friendship. An apology you demand means nothing. That middle finger reflects what they truly feel inside." Another female blogger reported experiencing a similar situation in Pakistan. She was distributing ice cream in a village she described as a slum, attracting a group of cheering children. After leaving, while recording a selfie video, she noticed a boy in the footage giving the middle finger towards the camera. After discovering this, she immediately returned to the village, trying to identify the boy. However, unlike the previous case, things did not go smoothly. Once villagers learned of her intention, they began to avoid her and were unwilling to help her find the boy. Eventually, a young and naive child led her to the boy's home. Unexpectedly, the boy refused to come out, and his family members only watched her from a distance without approaching or engaging with her. Moreover, the vlogger noticed that people around her were actively preventing her from finding the boy and were unwilling to hand him over. Using the translator app on her phone, she explained that she had brought many candies, but wanted the boy to apologize to her. In the end, an elderly man appeared and firmly told her that the boy would not be brought out to apologize. The man said he agreed with what she referred to as the so-called friendship between China and Pakistan, and thanked her for bringing ice cream and candy, but still refused to make the boy apologize. The vlogger was rebuffed and, visibly frustrated, said to her phone that this is the real quality of people here. She also added that she had been overcharged immediately after landing. What should have been a fare of just over 600 rupees ended up costing her more than 3,000. When buying flowers, she was told the price was 500, but was later asked to pay 1,500. Few people in the comments section expressed support for her. One netizen bluntly remarked, "Many Chinese people like to go to poorer countries to show charity. Now you see the reality. Chinese people are not as welcomed abroad as they imagine." Another commenter stated that the image of Chinese people has been damaged by these vloggers, who deliberately go into slum areas. For the sake of traffic and attention, they resort to all kinds of tactics, going into impoverished neighborhoods, pretending to do charity by buying snacks for children and giving to the poor, while actually trying to gain sympathy from Chinese audiences. The consequences of such behavior, they said, are extremely negative. Another comment read that one could encounter similar situations even in unfamiliar places within one's own country. Traveling alone in a foreign land and putting oneself at risk just to seek an explanation over something trivial like a middle finger is unwise. The commenter added that many people behave submissively towards the strong and arrogantly towards the weak while abroad, and the vlogger clearly had this sense of superiority. They said, if she dared to do this in a tough neighborhood in the US or a slum in India, then I would truly respect her courage. Some analysts pointed out that the distorted mindset of these vloggers is the result of decades of ideological conditioning. The behavior pattern of the female blogger, they argued, mirrors that of Chinese authorities, believing the small acts of goodwill can be exchanged for respect, or even for the dignity of others. In reality, relations between countries are more about the exchange of interests, and whether such exchanges are successful is ultimately judged by ordinary people. The people of Pakistan are not naive. They're well aware that countries often described as having close ties with China, such as North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and even their own, are, without exception, relatively poor and authoritarian. What this unfortunate vlogger fails to understand is that the notion of a so-called Iron Brotherhood is merely a narrative used to shape public perception. In the eyes of many Pakistanis today, this term is not a compliment. It may even be seen as an insult. Some observers have pointed out that regarding China-Pakistan relations, the direction of public opinion on mainland Chinese social media platforms has already reversed. In the past, screens were filled with paid commentators and coordinated accounts praising the China-Pakistan friendship, while videos and articles mocking the Iron Brother narrative or exposing the real views of Pakistanis were quickly deleted. Now, those coordinated voices have largely disappeared. The term China-Pakistan friendship has taken on a negative connotation, and the idea of Pakistan as an iron brother has become a target of ridicule. In fact, Pakistan's strategic direction began to undergo a major shift starting last year. In May of last year, India and Pakistan engaged in armed clashes that quickly escalated into intense aerial combat. Under mediation by President Donald Trump, both sides soon reached a ceasefire, but not long after, hostilities resumed. At the time, some analysts suggested that behind this brief but intense conflict, there were suspicions of external forces playing a role in fueling tensions. It coincided with a critical phase of the US-China trade war, and there were views that certain actors had the motive to ignite tensions in South Asia and create regional instability in order to divert US attention. However, economically fragile Pakistan was unwilling to sustain a prolonged conflict and therefore appreciated U.S. mediation. Pakistan was once the U.S.'s top ally in South Asia, but over years of shifting geopolitics, it ultimately moved closer to China. At a heavy cost, it drifted further away from Western countries and suffered severe impacts on its manufacturing sector due to large-scale Chinese involvement, and seeing the strategic port of Gwadar coming under strong Chinese control. This India-Pakistan conflict, however, unexpectedly gave Pakistan an opportunity to repair relations with the United States. Pakistan quickly moved closer to Saudi Arabia, and the two sides signed a strategically significant mutual defense treaty, under which an attack on one would be considered an attack on both. At the same time, they expanded economic cooperation, including the previously mentioned $6.3 billion loan. This breakthrough has been seen as a step, reportedly facilitated by the United States, toward helping Pakistan reduce its reliance on China. From that point on, pro-Pakistan narratives within mainland China began to shift in tone, and pro-CCP commenters in Taiwan also started echoing official narratives on television to Pakistan as an ungrateful traitor.
巴基斯坦卖各种资源给西方。
So, this so-called ironclad Pakistan, why does it seem a bit rebellious lately? Let me explain. In the past, Pakistan was poor and underdeveloped. Facing the powerful threat from India, it had to rely heavily on China. That's why the relationship was so close, because it needed China. Now that it has found a financial backer in Saudi Arabia, it has loosened up. Do you understand?
In fact, there have always been forces within Pakistan opposing China, most notably the Balochistan Liberation Army, the BLA. On March 20th, 2024, armed militants carrying guns and explosives attacked a complex outside Gwadar port, which housed government offices, intelligence agencies, and paramilitary units. Reuters reported that the attackers first detonated multiple bombs and then opened fire, attempting to storm the facility. The Associated Press reported that at least 8 attackers were killed, along with 3 security personnel. The BLA claimed responsibility for the attack. According to statements cited by Reuters, the militants targeted offices of Pakistan's intelligence agencies. As support and its associated facilities are key symbols of the China-Pakistan economic corridor and Chinese investment in Pakistan, the attack has been widely interpreted as having both anti-government and anti-Chinese project motivations. On March 26, 2024, in the Shangla area of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in northwestern Pakistan, a vehicle was struck by a car bomb on the Karakoram highway and plunged into a ravine. 5 Chinese engineers and their Pakistani driver were all killed. According to police, the Chinese engineers had departed from Islamabad and were heading towards the construction site of the Dasu Dam. The Dasu Dam is Pakistan's largest hydropower project and was also targeted in a bombing in July 2021. That killed 13 people, including 9 Chinese nationals. It is one of the most important Belt and Road projects in Pakistan. The latest attack was considered the second attack targeting Belt and Road projects within a single week. At the end of January, the BLA launched another, even larger wave of coordinated attacks across Balochistan province. Reuters reported that the operation took place almost simultaneously across multiple locations. Attackers, disguised as civilians, targeted hospitals, schools, banks, markets, police stations, prisons, border posts, and paramilitary facilities, and briefly took control of some government sites. A follow-up Reuters report on February 4th stated that the attacks spanned more than a dozen locations and were one of the largest operations by the group. The attacks resulted in dozens of civilian and Pakistani military casualties, while authorities claimed that over 100 militants were killed. The 2026 operation differed in tactics from the 2024 Gwadar port attack, but the underlying logic is seen as highly consistent. The BLA appears to be shifting from single-point, high-symbolism attacks to multiple-point, simultaneous operations, designed to create a sense of province-wide paralysis. The ultimate focus remains Gwadar port. Gwadar has become a focal point because it is both a strategic port in Balochistan and one of the most visible symbols of Chinese investment. Balochistan is Pakistan's largest province by area and richest in natural resources, yet has long been plagued by poverty and conflict. Separatist groups have consistently demanded greater autonomy and a larger share of local natural resource revenues. Their narrative is straightforward. The resources are here, but the benefits flow to the center. The land is here, but decision-making power is not. For the BLA, attacking Chinese projects generates the greatest political and media impact. Gwadar Port is one of the core symbols of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and one of China's most prominent and strategically significant infrastructure investments in Pakistan. Striking such a target is far more likely to attract international attention than attacking an ordinary government building. It also exerts greater pressure on the Pakistani government and foreign investors. The BLA appears to be conveying three layers of messages. First, that the Pakistani government is unable to protect large-scale projects. Second, that Chinese investment is not a development dividend, but rather a political target that can be attacked. And third, that as long as the Baloch issue remains unresolved, any grand narrative can be undermined by security realities. Some analysts believe that the current situation in Balochistan is the result of deep-rooted corruption formed through long-term cooperation between the Pakistani government and the Chinese authorities. Although the BLA's armed actions are controversial, they seem to have identified key structural problems within the Pakistani system. This situation has been compared to what previously occurred in Venezuela, with a similarly straightforward path to resolution. Once freed from Chinese influence, Balochistan could quickly see renewal. After the BLA attacks escalated this year, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs shifted from its relatively low-profile and cautious tone in 2024. On February 3rd, it issued a strong condemnation of the incidents. On the surface, this appeared to express condolences for the victims and concern for Chinese infrastructure. But its underlying intent was seen as signaling to the Pakistani government and warning it not to move too close to the United States. However, developments have moved in the opposite direction of what was expected. Relations between Islamabad and Washington have rapidly warmed, and Pakistan has unexpectedly taken on the role of an intermediary in the US-Iran conflict. Observers believe that Pakistan's ability to serve as a mediator is closely tied to its geographic position, historical relationships, and diplomatic experience. On one hand, Pakistan has the world's second-largest Shia population, approximately 30 to 40 million, and has historically supported Iran. On the other hand, it was once a key ally of the United States. Most importantly, Pakistan's increasingly visible shift away from China has been seen as earning it greater trust from Washington. Some even argue that this mediation role is effectively Pakistan acting as a communication channel for the United States, serving as a form of strategic endorsement from Washington. Recent developments are clear. Ceasefire negotiations have collapsed, largely because Iran is unwilling to abandon its nuclear ambitions. Reports suggest that a second round of talks between the United States and Iran could take place as early as April 16th. Islamabad is once again being considered as the host city, while Geneva, Switzerland is also listed as a possible venue. Observers point out that the likelihood of Pakistan continuing as mediator is rapidly declining, as it has officially announced its participation in the defense of Saudi Arabia. This means Pakistan may now be forced into becoming a military opponent of Iran, which has continued to launch attacks against Gulf countries. Pakistan's Chinese-made fighter jets, whose performance has been questioned, could potentially face losses in Iranian airspace. However, in the long run, Islamabad's move away from China and toward the Western world is seen as leading to a more promising future.